Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the season premiere of Obi-Wan Kenobi, parts 1 and 2. And, just as a little thing, even though it actually works out that I'm alright kind of reviewing these two episodes together, if you're gonna do a weekly, I would prefer it if you just do one episode, because 2 episodes could sometimes be like, okay, do I make 2 videos or do I make 1 video? And then the boys are just like, fuck it, here's 3. It's just like trying to like half fuse the whole binge model. And if you're going weekly, which is fine, just do it weekly. That's just a streaming kind of thing that's irksome, but that actually doesn't really mess around with this one. I thought this was alright. See, whenever you're doing some kind of like filling in the gap kind of story, you've always got to watch out for where you start from and where you end from, because you always have to go to some kind of status quo kind of effect. Whereas you got to make sure that since you're connecting certain things, you have to end at a place where it doesn't affect future events retcon wise, otherwise you start going fuckballs wild. That is kind of what you're kind of having here with Kenobi. It's just a story that's pretty much showcasing, like, it's been 10 years after episode 3, so about 9 years before episode 4 is going to begin, and it's following Kenobi. However, after going through these 2 episodes, I believe that this is going to be a case of a stretched story that they're stretching into 6 parts, rather than something that they're just going to try and load up as much shit as possible. So, because I was just really uninterested in what was kind of going on, which really kind of sucks, because I like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, alright? He does a very good job as him. And the thing is, it would be interesting to kind of explore this kind of territory if it was just solely focused on Obi-Wan and what random shit he could be potentially doing. Now, granted, that's a very character-focused one that I really would have been interested in. Here, it goes for just, like, more of an overarching plot and just trying to do other kind of stuff as well. And I don't mind that, but most of the characters are not as fleshed out as I would like, and kind of are just like there to me. Kenobi's the draw for me, and I don't think they're focusing enough on him, if that makes sense. It's really kind of weird until I start kind of digging into it, because we got to start off with showing the fallout of Order 66. And in theory, I don't mind that. However, because I understand that as a linchpin moment in the Star Wars universe, the turning of the tide, the beginning of the Empire, the end of the Jedi. It's just, you see it so much and so done that I'm just like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, alright, some of them that we see, these are probably, they're escaping. It is an interesting kind of action scene, because we see a Jedi protecting these children from the clone troopers attacking. However, they speed off, and I think that some of them are pretty much going to be looked at to be the Inquisitors that we see later on. And we then shift into like the 10 years later. We see these Inquisitors are trying to find a Jedi, and the like, I don't fault the actors, alright? I'm more on content and direction for what goes on, because Reva, for some reason, at least in the first episode, has it in for Kenobi and is trying to find Kenobi, and it's blinding her. And the Grand Inquisitor is pretty much just like giving his spiel to the people. Jedi hunt themselves, they can't stop their compassion and everything, and you just kind of wait for him, as this Jedi dude had been helping people out. Pretty much uses the Force to save someone again, and then speeds off and runs away. We do see them later on, as the Inquisitors are just kind of like putzing around and trying to get him. And that's kind of the thing. The Inquisitors, now granted, I don't mind that a Jedi escaped them. It didn't feel... How do I explain this? It's... If you have a Jedi kind of escaping the Inquisitors, you have to see that the Inquisitors pose a very big threat, and you kind of need to showcase them as the deadly force that they are. Now, granted, I understand that there's other mediums that have showcased that, like the clone, rebels, and what's kind of going on with them as they're hunting Jedi and everything. But in here, with seeing these characters, it's almost like, okay, it seemed like you let him get away, maybe? Which could have been, I mean, he's able to utilize and run away, but it's just like, oh, okay. It just doesn't give me, I know that the Inquisitors and their hunting of the Jedi, they are a big threat. It just really didn't come off that much here. And that the Grand Inquisitor, it's just boring to me. I don't get a sense of like dread or like menace from him whatsoever. And Reva, I'm just like, alright, you're dogmatic on getting Kenobi. That pretty much turns out to be most of her main thing. However, they could go through a little bit later and like flesh out her character more, but I don't get the feeling that, I mean, we're already, this is episode 1, we get episode 2, and then we've got 4 more episodes, so they've got limited time to delve into that even more. Then we pretty much see what Kenobi's been doing. He's just been holding down a regular job. We see that people are downtrodden on Tatooine. He keeps getting this like little bit of meat from his kind of meat job and giving it to his ride. He pretty much has been hermetized at this point. Talks with this Jawa, getting certain things, trying to buy toys for Luke as he's watching Luke. Sets the toy out, just out there, and then we see that Owen confronts him and says, "Don't do it. I don't want him anywhere near you." And I'm like, he's just like, it's a toy. And then bringing up that like at some point he's going to have to be trained, and throwing it in his face that, yeah, you trained his father and look how that worked out. And I'm just like, it takes 2 people to be trained, and if you had spent any kind of time with Anakin, I'm not saying that Obi-Wan is completely faultless in this, even though I identify with him more and like him more. It's just Anakin also chose his own kind of thing, so it's really kind of taking his agency away for him to be like, it was all your fault, Obi-Wan. It's like, yeah, but there's that whole kind of thing of like, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink kind of shit. Like, Anakin had his own kind of problems and hang-ups that helped to create the perfect storm of him falling to the dark side. Like, there was only a certain amount that Obi-Wan could have done, and honestly, he did most of it, even though at certain points he could have done better. And then we see that the Inquisitors are popping up, asking about Jedi. Owen covers for them. One lady gets her hand chopped off to show that the Inquisitor Reva means business. She's hunting more for Kenobi, but they're still just looking for Jedi. Her one Inquisitor, the 5th brother, she's 3rd sister, is like, what the fuck you doing? Stop just jonesing for Kenobi. She's like, whatever. Screw it. Like, whatever, fine, who? And they kind of continue on their stuff. Obi-Wan, like, gets out of town, and he gets accosted by the Jedi, like, Master Kenobi, help me. And he's like, no, just live a normal life. Bury that in the sand. And it's like, damn it, Kenobi. But the thing is, I get where he's coming from, because he's lost everything. He's like, we fucked up, we lost. But this Jedi hasn't given up. But then we see later on that he has died. Because they string him up, and Obi-Wan does see it, and he's like, that ain't right. And let's see. We also then show that we get more of young Leia here, and I don't have a problem with that. But my issue with it is, I don't mind it dovetailing with Kenobi, but I think that it would have been an interesting kind of series on its own to follow a young Leia doing things. It's just kind of weird, because Lucasfilm has talked about how they're going to not try and recast the original cast, and then we are like, hey, here's the younger version and all that kind of stuff. I don't mind seeing 10-year-old Leia, and it's interesting to see her doing all this stuff. It's just, like, what is it? It's just, I wasn't expecting it. And seeing her kind of, like, dealing with royal life was interesting, and it's just trying to, like, introduce this new information to what we've seen of Leia in the original trilogy, and it still works out. It's like, yeah, she'd be kind of a rambunctious child. She is Anakin's kid after all, because you also see the same bit with Luke as he's doing pod racing kind of shit. And she would just kind of escape. She'd orchestrate ruses and everything, which actually showcases more of her Padme kind of skills as well, to utilize people for subterfuge and kind of like taking her place, which worked out pretty well as her mom's like, hey, let's see you. She's all dressed up. She's like out in the woods playing with her like little droid, and she's like, come on, we gotta do this. And you get out what you put in. And it's pretty much a function. She like says hello to her cousin. Her cousin acts like a douche nozzle. She fucking puts him in his place. And just because he's talking about lesser life forms and stuff like that and saying you're not even really an Organa. And she's like, yeah, that's how I talk to you, you dipshit. And granted, she's a 10-year-old kid. She doesn't call him a dipshit, but it's the verbal equivalent. And then her mom's saying, like, you got to apologize to him. It's like, what? Like, if she called him a fucking nerf herd motherfucker and, like, completely beat his ass like a bongo, maybe I'd be along for her to be like, I'm sorry I whooped your ass. You know? But, honestly, she has nothing to apologize for. The cousin was being a douche. She verbally put the shit in his place. And I'm just like, But we do see the, like, whole kind of bonding moment between her and Bale, and how he would like to do the same kind of things that she would. And that he kind of understanding that shift and growing up and all that. And she's like, alright, I'll apologize and everything. And pretty much we get through that. But we see that somebody was looking at her as she's kind of like running through the forest and all that. And she does go back into the forest, and Jesus. So the inciting incident to pretty much get Kenobi back out is that Leia gets kidnapped. This is the worst fucking kidnapping I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, direction, how people act in it, it's honestly, like, I'm not trying to knock a 10-year-old kid, alright? And her acting's fine. She's good. I got nothing wrong with her. And content-wise, she's been pretty good so far. These are, like, three grown fucking adults. And the amount of buffoonery that ensues without it being kind of comedic is just insane. Leia should have got away. Like, two scenarios should have happened here. They immediately grabbed her, or she got away. Like, but the thing is, it goes and they draw out the chase scene. There's, like, characters that get stopped by things that really shouldn't have stopped them, unless they're completely and utterly, they have things that they cannot actually do. And we see one of the people had been sent out to get her, and he gets shot, and then they capture her, and it's just the most inept kidnapping I've ever seen, which was really odd for me to kind of bring up. But then this leads to Bale trying to get in contact with Kenobi, and he does pull out his stuff. He's like, listen, I'm not that same man anymore. And it's that lines up with Kenobi at this point, because he is defeated. He's been spending 10 years ruminating on his failure. He's been trying to contact his master Qui-Gon, but has been unsuccessful, and he just doesn't feel like he's that person anymore. Like, he failed, and he doesn't want to fail again. And I empathize with that. I truly get that. He's been stuck in that failure for what happened with the loss of Anakin to him, and it's deeply wounded him and affected him. However, even to that kind of extent, I'm weird in that even if I'd failed a friend or whatnot, if I had learned that a 10-year-old kid had been kidnapped, I would do what I needed to. But this is the whole kind of meta-narrative there's a call to action for the hero. The hero either accepts or defers, and is like, I'm not going to do it until something either forces them along on this journey or not. And of course, Bill then does come and is like, listen, friend, you're the only one I trust with this. I can't bring this up to anybody else. Otherwise, they'll look into it, and I need your help. And he decides to. He goes back out in the desert, digs up his lightsaber and Anakin's, and decides to go on the journey. He gets on the transport and goes off. We also see that Leia tried to utilize her drone droid to help her out. It's like, nobody's coming for you, and breaks it. I'm like, damn you, asshole. Dayu is the planet where they pretty much get to, and Kenobi gets there. And it's pretty much your undersea belly kind of planet. Neon signs and everything, people peddling drugs and all that. He kind of gets there, sees kind of what's going on. We see a veteran clone trooper asking for money, and then we see the new stormtroopers going around. He gets info, tries to ask where a girl is, and his daughter's actually in this, talking with Ewan McGregor's daughter is playing this character that kind of gives her information, like, yeah, if you're looking for her, she's pretty much gone. And then this other dude's like, hey, I can kind of help you out. Then we get introduced to this Haja character who is pretending to be a Jedi, helping some people, but he also needs and likes money. Kenobi pretty much calls him on that shit and gets the information of where she could potentially be, which is where she is. And he is able to infiltrate. He's a little bit rusty at first before he starts kind of like taking him out, and we learned that this was utilized by Reva to draw Kenobi out. Yeah, because she wants to pretty much, we learn a little bit later in episode 2, part 2, that she is going to deliver him to Vader for some unspecified reward. We get stuff from the Grand Inquisitor pretty much calling her gutter trash and you'll never ascend to whatever fucking thing I am. And I'm like, dude, you are like the equivalent of like, I'd expect a Moff to act like he does with his kind of shit instead of an Inquisitor, let alone the Grand Inquisitor. And I'm just like, alright. Yep. So, he's able to infiltrate, pretty much gets their lowdown, knocks him out, gets Leia out, tries to get her to trust him, and he's like, listen, you're gonna act like my daughter. And she's like, granddaughter, maybe. And I'm like, yeah, he looks old, but, like, sure. Now, granted, since I've aged with this series, and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of more on, like, Kenobi's kind of age at this point. Not completely, though. But I'm like, yeah, okay. It's really weird, because when you're a kid, certain older people are like, man, they must be old. It's like, then when you get kind of closer to that age, it's like, damn, they're not that old. So it was interesting to get her kind of quips and everything, and he gets her kind of like a little jacket thing, and also he's like, we don't need the gloves, but he also gets the gloves for her as well because he has a soft spot for them. They're Anakin's kids, you know, and he tries to like get her through, but we see that the Inquisitors lock down the city, and then Reva's like, you know what, I'm gonna set bounty hunters on them too because of that, and he's able to like keep some people from going on. But she sees that he has got a bounty on him, and she's like, you fooled me, because she also saw the lightsaber and asked if he was a Jedi, and he's like, no, because she also tried to get him to levitate her to prove his Jedi powers. I'm like, I get that you want that kind of proof, but the Jedi are being hunted to extinction. That is not a great thing to do in at least a public forum. And then we pretty much see the chase sequence as he's trying to get Leia back, and he's like dealing with like bounty hunters and shit coming after him, utilizing more of a blaster than anything. They get to like a rooftop kind of scenario, and he's able to take out some more bounty hunters as Reva is like Batman on top of one of the buildings, pretty much just like, and I'm like, okay, and then sees this stuff, and then there's a lot of kind of filler things in this where she's just like jumping around, and I get that it's showcasing her acrobatic skills and her use of the Force. However, it goes on longer than it's needed and doesn't really show off or pay off much as it's going on. But we see that Kenobi keeps reiterating Leia to not kind of jump over this thing before it shifts to the point where it's like, all right, enough time's passed. He said that line enough. Jump, little Leia. And Leia tries to jump, doesn't make it, and is falling down. And Kenobi finally reaches out with the Force and lowers her down for probably the first time in 10 years. And it's nice to see that he's still able to utilize his connection to the Force. Gets down there and she's like, wow, you actually were helping. And then Haja pops up. I was like, all right. Because he had seen the whole bounty thing and everything. He's like, listen, you're a Jedi. I want to help you. Even though I've done some things, I want to help you. And then pretty much sets them, since even though everything's kind of like cordoned off, there are automated like cargo barges, and he kind of sets them off on that way. Reva pops up and be like, hey, tell me what you know. He's like, I'm not. And he was like pretty much saying that he was a Jedi, and she's like, you're not a Jedi. And then utilizes, I think, Kylo's kind of interrogation technique. It doesn't hurt him or anything, and she doesn't kill him. It's like, alright, you are singularly focused on your goal, so you don't murder or kill for any fucked up reason. So it's like, interesting, even though you may, well, except if it can lead you to information on Kenobi, where this, you're able to kind of, no, if you don't need to maim, if you just would just extract from the right person, you could just do that. Huh. But she runs off. We get to the point, she wants to see, like, the lightsaber used. Like, no, let's go off here. Of course, Reva catches up, starts pretty much doing her monologues, like, yeah, I'll take you to Lord Vader. Anakin survived. I'm like, this Anakin, like, it really confused me because I didn't think a lot of people knew that, like, I understand the Inquisitors are not a lot of people. They are usually the select Fallen or other kind of Force users that have been brought in to be utilized as Inquisitors under Palpatine and kind of higher echelons of the Empire. So it's not just ragtag frickin' random stormtrooper being like, hey, Darth Vader, or should I say Anakin Skywalker, and then you know what I mean? Like, but still, it's just more information on that than I thought would have been there. This, of course, is a revelation to Kenobi, who thought that Anakin was dead. Though, granted, depending upon how his hermitage was going out, if he had even just looked at anything, well, granted, hermitage on Tatooine, which is usually in the Outer Rim, which really doesn't usually get much information, he could theoretically have not heard that Lord Vader was there, but you would think, like, utilizing as a high position within the Empire. However, you would think that once he got into any kind of place where a lot of Empire propaganda would have been, that Lord Vader would have popped up, and he'd have been like, that ain't right. Anakin was called Lord Vader and that shit. I don't know. It's always the kind of problems that pop up within prequels and other kind of in-between stories. I was just kind of confused at how readily available someone would be able to, like, he's Anakin Skywalker, and I'm like, who are you to him? Alright, fine, cool, whatever. And she's drawing closer to Kenobi, but the Grand Inquisitor is like, you've been fucking shit up. I'm gonna arrest Kenobi. And she kills him with the barest minimum effort. Like, if he'd had been a Moff, I would have got that. It's like, I will bring in Kenobi, and I will gain favor with Lord Vader and the Emperor. But this is supposed to be like the Grand Inquisitor that's got his own lightsaber. She just fucking stabs him so easily. It just was like, alright, that's a character I didn't care about, but it was like really fucking easy for her, and she really barely did anything. I wouldn't have minded if they did kind of a little clash or whatnot, just to make it so that way we could understand that Inquisitors are badasses, and that it is hard to kill one, and that certain kind of more treacherous moves would have been needed other than just she's got her lightsaber on and she just fucking stabs him. But Leia pretty much set up the thing to go. Kenobi goes on. He goes, Anakin, and he's just like, he's not really hearing her. We hear the sound being muffled, and then we shift, and we see that Anakin's in a bacta tank as he's doing the Darth Vader breathing and everything. It's like, alright. So, overall, I was just on this. I didn't mind Leia's character and Kenobi's characters. However, everybody else around them needs much more work in fleshing out, and that certain sequences, events just needed to be better worked out and better choreographed, and just it's really weird because I'm watching it and I don't care. And that, now granted, if you care and you like this, good on you. I got no problems with that. And this is you eating it up and everything, cool. That's fine. I want that for you. That's cool. Keep on keeping on and doing that. Alright? But for me, I just didn't care about it. And I don't need action everywhere. Be like, ooh, shiny thing, ooh, shiny thing. You know what I mean? I don't need that. There needs to be purpose in that. There needs to be character communicated through that. There needs to be whys and what that means and what are the consequences of these actions. Because killing a Grand Inquisitor, that's a big fucking thing. So we'll kind of see how this goes and how this kind of affects things. It's like, alright, I understand trying to like help Leia and everything, but we do know that Kenobi is going to meet Vader again. And it's kind of more impactful when it was just the prequels and the original trilogy, when Vader is talking about like, when last we met, I was the learner, but now I am the master. To that effect. I didn't look that up, and it's been a bit since I've seen episode 4, but along that effect. Only a master of evil, Darth, as they're like fighting and everything. And it's just like, okay, how many times did they fucking like meet up again and fight? It's like, alright? You have to make sure that you have a valid reason and are able to make sure that the consequences from something like that doesn't bleed over and make certain things less. That's a hard thing to balance within prequels and interstories. But we'll kind of have to see. And the thing is, I don't think it's like the worst thing I've seen. Definitely not the worst thing I've seen streaming-wise, but it's kind of like my most neutral kind of thing where I'm like, I don't see the point of this. And I'm just like, not as much interested in it as I would like. Like, I'm more interested in learning about Mando and Grogu and the rest of those from that. Boba Fett, I was interested in until they pretty much didn't really like do much with him. Just like, alright, cool. Hopefully they do more with Kenobi, because Kenobi's a character that I really like in the Star Wars universe, and really, he's a big one. I mean, he helped train Luke, he helped train Anakin, he did a lot of kind of stuff, and I do like his character journey and everything. So we'll kind of have to see how that kind of works out. So those are my opinions on the episodes. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked them, if you didn't like them, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.